find just one fraudulent ballot, one illegal alien in the voting booth, the logic tells us that there must be more, because you don't flip an election with one ballot. I love catching the employee who's stealing from you and you being naive enough to think it's the only time he did it. No, it's the first time you caught him. So I don't know, is that partisan wishful thinking? Or is it just because, like so many other examples, the progressive mind is one of a child. That's a child's brain Wolf Blitzer is illustrating for everybody. You know what I kept thinking of as I watched these, what do you call them, these like precinct captains who would not let Republican observers into the ballot rooms to observe the counting? I hope you saw these videos. Just standing there. No, you can't come in, even though you're legally able to do so, and a judge just ordered us to open up the doors for you. No, you can't come in. You can't watch what's going on in the back rooms. You know what I kept thinking of? And I haven't really told this story in a long time. I was a freshman at Bishop Hendrick. I was like 15 years old, and I went to the varsity basketball game that night, Hendricken versus Central at Central. So and I think it's the two best teams in the state that year. So it's a big matchup, rowdy, small gymnasium. And the guy at the scoring table, there are 5 to 10 people sitting at the scoring table along the basketball, the sideline there. And, a few people are controlling the scoreboard, the score, someone's keeping track of, the fouls that each player has. And another guy's in charge of the clock. And in the final minute of the game, Central was trailing by a few points. And it became obvious that it would be beneficial to Central, to their team, if they had more time to mount this comeback. They needed to hit a shot, get a stop, hit another shot to be in striking distance for the win. And all of a sudden you realize that as play was going on, the clock wasn't moving. So there's 30 seconds left, but it's not counting down to 29, 28, 27. And the crowd starts screaming. And then the crowd starts to realize that the man at the scoring table has his fingers on the levers, that he's doing it on purpose. That when he thinks no one's looking at the clock because they're consumed by the game in front of them, he was stopping the clock to give an advantage to his home team. It was, what's the line from Anchorman? Like, I wasn't even mad. I was impressed. I mean, it was because the nerve on this guy. And it really became something when he started to get pointed out and the refs were going over to him, asking him what he's doing, and he would just shrug his shoulders. And then they would resume the game and he'd do it again. Now there's 10 seconds left in the game, and it's supposed to be going 10, 9, 8, 7, and the clock is frozen, and more fans are screaming because now they're watching him and the clock and the game all at the same time, and they are screaming. And then at one point, I'll never forget it, he starts to smirk. He didn't care how many people knew. He thought it was funny. So I couldn't help but think of that story when I was watching these precinct captains and the nerve on them to not allow the Republicans to go in and validate the ballots. So I grew up when I was 15 years old, learned a very basic lesson. Not everyone is good. And that it's like so hard to say these days, for a variety of multicultural reasons. But the naive thought that everyone is good, that there aren't bad people out there, that it's all a matter of subjective opinion and perspective. But no, not everyone seeks to do the right thing. for goodness sake, you know? Different types of people are, ready for it, different. People in other countries, people in other states, even people in other neighborhoods. So we're talking about culture for all the beginners. That crap I saw from the scoring table that day, it just wouldn't happen where I was from. And if it did, it wouldn't have been condoned. Again, culture. And it's in subsequent years, I've witnessed over and over again that same type of sleaze inside all types of liberal outfits for over 20 years now. At this point, I recognize it when I see it. And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be top-down, coordinated by Joe Biden himself. You don't need to instruct Democratic operatives to cheat on behalf of the presidential candidate. Trust me. And that's where the liberal political culture comes into play. But again, I go back. I'm almost having an argument with myself here. Here's what I'm not certain of. Like many of you, I've seen a lot of the footage, the reports, the irregularities, and so on. But was this mostly the typical filth we always see coming out of certain precincts? And was the fraud extensive enough across multiple states, resulting in tens of thousands of votes, enough to flip an election? That's what you need to convince someone like me of. And I'm certain that's what Trump is going to have to convince a court of, right? I mean, voting irregularities isn't going to be enough, I don't think, unless the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming, as they say. That's what's so frustrating about this. Like Blago just said, it's tough to prove, but you know it when you see it. But putting the ballots back in the envelopes and recounting, like, what a mess. And any complete fraudster worth his salt would make sure it's a mess afterward, to make sure that it would be like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube.